running in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Not concerned. Everything is something we can fix. As I mentioned, certain times you'll see them make a play. A quarterback will get out, do something that's what he does. And then some other things we can fix. And, we always take a hard look at ourselves. How can we teach it better? What maybe do we miss as a coaching staff to help our players? Because our players are really bought in and working hard for us. So, we're just looking for the little things. And it wasn't any one thing. We just kind of mounting it up. A little miss here and there that turned into some yards for him. It hurt us.
Ed Donatel, that was a master class in saying, so the first 15 to 20 seconds of that clip was him basically saying, my scheme is excellent, and these guys ran it poorly against the Eagles. So how can we, the blame is on us as coaches, how can we do a better job teaching these dumbass players how to run? That's how, right? He's like, we just need to teach them better how to run this glorious scheme that I have brought over from Denver.
I'm a defensive genius, and the fact that these guys cannot keep up with my genius is their problem, but I'll try and help them eventually.
Yeah. So let's talk about the defense here to start this Feedback Friday episode of Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports entertainment, speculation, therapy. You can always send us, we stockpile messages from you guys through the Score North app, the feedback tab, so we can read them on Fridays. And you can also hit us up in the YouTube comment section, Twitter. We're up over 10 or 11,000 followers on TikTok now, Score North TikTok. That's right. We're blowing up all over the talk. But let's start with Mike Lee here. He says, am I the only person in Vikings country who thinks Eric Kendricks is absolutely awful at tackle football now? Why is this puny, timid, Paul Krausian middle linebacker immune from criticism? He is problem number one on this defense. Our middle linebacker is skittish and completely useless against the run. Nobody talks about it. Kirk this, Kevin that. Eric Kendricks escapes even the slightest amount of criticism, and he is without question the worst player on the team. Don't you guys see this? It is not politically acceptable to get on Eric Kendricks. What am I missing? Thank you. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, we criticized him last year, so we are not on the...
We got smoked for that, too. How can you guys criticize him?
Yeah, we did. Okay, so somewhere in the middle, I think we can all come to agreement that Kendricks is not the player that he once was. I don't think he's the worst. I mean, that's very, very harsh. There are areas that it's correct, but I feel like it's overly harsh. But do I have concerns about the two guys that the Vikings are playing at linebacker in this scheme? Absolutely, I do. Hicks as well. I think their goal is to, first of all, I think the goal is to actually not, I think the smaller player is their goal because they want speed there. So like if you're like, well, this linebacker doesn't look like the guys that wore a neck roll in 1995, he's not supposed to. That being said, have we seen an obvious, just from an eye test, regression in the last year plus now? Yes. Yes, we have. These guys have miles on them. They have a lot of miles on them. 30-plus-year-old football players, unless they're really freaky quarterbacks, drop off. He's dropping off.
Yeah, he was. All right. Some of this is hard. Like when you're watching a football game at live speed, you can tell oftentimes which offensive linemen are having a good or a bad day, if the quarterback's having a good or bad day. There's certain positions, unless you're staring at them for 3 hours, that it's really hard, unless you're studying film, it's hard to know. You can see when a linebacker makes a nice tackle or a nice play, but if he was 2 or 3 steps behind on a run play and, didn't cover the hole that he was supposed to, it's hard sometimes. So is Pro Football Focus the gospel, the be-all, end-all? No, but they do consult for 32 teams, and they have smart people studying these intricate play-by-play things, right? So Eric Kendricks in 2019 and 20 was one of the 5 or 10 best linebackers in the NFL, hands down. He had a 90 PFF grade in 2019 out of 100. It dipped a little bit in 2020 to 82.6, but that's still outstanding. And he's been great in coverage, too, throughout his career. Just you constantly remember him popping up one-handed interception here, knock a ball away, diving play there, right? So a 90 grade in 2019, an 83 grade in 2020. That grade dipped to 59 in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And collectively in the first 2 games, it's 65 overall this year. But the biggest drop off for him has been in the running game. It's run defense and tackling. He missed 3 tackles in the first 2 games. He just isn't, and he's 30 and a half years old. He's just not as quick to the ball as he used to be, both in coverage and also in the run game. Yes. And I don't think it's fair to say that he's like the worst player on their defense. But name me a linebacker that turned 30, going to be 31 years old, that was the same as they were when they were 26, 27. I mean, like Brian Urlacher at the end of his career in his early 30s could barely move out there.
Yeah, he wasn't.
And so to me, it's not a coincidence that the Vikings running game, partially because Daniil Hunter was hurt too, like that matters. But their running defense has taken a huge dip at the same time as Eric Kendricks has taken a dip, according to Pro Football Focus. So it's a thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this, and we saw this in the loss on Monday night, this defense calls for speed. I mean, Philadelphia made the Vikings look slow. That's a problem. The other thing that we probably don't talk about enough, and the Vikings have tried to replace this guy, but they've never, I don't think, come close to replacing him at his best. Linval Joseph was dominant. Linval Joseph anchored the middle of that line in a way that was Pro Bowl caliber. And they've tried with Pierce. They're now trying with Tomlinson and Phillips. And you know what? Those guys might be fine. But we forget that Kendricks lined up behind a guy who, at his best, was absolutely fantastic. And he got old, and now he's gone. And when you can't replace that guy, and I don't think we ever appreciated him enough, because to your point, Phil, it really doesn't show up unless you go back and study tape. But that's another factor. When he was in his prime, Eric Kendricks had a guy in front of him who was probably top 5 in the entire league at his position.
Yeah.
He also made a really big play at the end of the Packers game in week 1 to kind of solidify the win. His pass coverage is still pretty good, but his play is not what it used to be. It's just clear. Realistic Randy kind of made me try to apologize for him after his game-saving play in week 1, but I had major questions about him going into the season. And yes, he's clearly not going to be the same all-pro guy that he was with being one of the best linebackers as of 2 to 3 years ago. But can he still be a serviceable player in pass coverage? Can he do things that still help out the defense? I still think he can be that guy. But yeah, he's not going to be the same linebacker he once was.
Next question here from Jay Schwartz. This team looks like a team that basically had its last 2 drafts completely flushed down the drain. You're not always going to see it on the field, but Spielman's stench of absolutely tanking about 75% or all draft picks in the last few years is going to linger over this team for years to come. Think about how much talent is missing from the roster overall. I mean, that 2021 purge, the fact that you had 4 third-round picks, 3 are off the roster a year and a half later. In fact, they made 26 draft picks in 2020 and 21, which is a ridiculous amount of draft picks to make, right? But you do it for depth purposes. All right, we're a little bit thin, so let's draft 26 players and hope for the best. Let's see here, 2020. Let's see, it was Justin Jefferson, Cleveland. Okay, Cam Dantzler, Wanham. That's 4. KJ Osborne. So maybe Josh Metellus. So of the 26, I would count 9 or 10 that are fairly regular contributors, but I'm also counting Patrick Jones and Kene Nwangwu, and Nwangwu is only for kick returns. So, yeah. And Patrick Jones he's out there a little bit, I guess. He's
starting to play a little bit more.
Yeah. So, but it's like maybe 8 or 9 out of 26. And I haven't compared that to the rest of the league percentage-wise, but the fact that they cut a bunch of third-rounders, it does kind of feel like his point is right, that, boy, they had a chance to build some depth here, and maybe 7 or 8 guys at the end of the day are going to be helping you.
It would be a fun exercise, too, take some work, but fun, to go back and look at how many in those 2 drafts, Spielman's tradebacks to accumulate picks caused him to pass on guys who are now good players. Because like that was always my thing is like, okay, it's cool. You traded a 3rd round pick and you got a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th, but who did you pass on? And like how many players in a higher round did you decide to defer on because, oh man, I got 3 draft picks for 1? That would be a really interesting exercise now to see who the Vikings didn't take in trying to accumulate those 26 or a lot of those 26 picks.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, the draft is such a crapshoot that it does make sense to trade back and accumulate picks so that you can have a higher percentage of 4 guys panning out or 6 guys. Because every time you take away picks to move up, you're taking a risk on a guy that could be a bust, but then you're also depleting the depth. So I understand why teams trade back, but it felt very few and far between over the 15 years that Spielman was here where they would say, that's our guy, we're going to move up and get that guy, right?
You get why teams trade back, and so do I, but do you get why they do it that much? And are you telling me your scouting department didn't just see you pass on at least a few guys in earlier rounds that they had scouted and felt could have contributed? Because I'm with you. I am not against trading back. But when you say 26 picks, you're right. It's ridiculous.
That's a lot. That's a lot of picks. Frank Moyers asks, what happens if the Lions rock the Vikings this weekend? What do you think happens? What happens if the Lions rock the Vikings?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're going to. But if they do, you know what? We don't know. The change is exciting. And the first game was too. But in fairness, we don't know what our expectations for this team should be. We don't. So if they get rocked, am I absolutely going to be floored? Now, if they no-show it and they're really poorly coached, but I mean, Detroit can score points. Detroit also gives up a ton of points. In fact, I think they're second to last in the league to the Cardinals in that. But if they get rocked and Detroit just plays that well, I mean, look, to me, this is probably a borderline playoff team in a bad division that you could win. But
the Lions or the Vikings?
The Vikings. The Vikings, in my opinion, are a borderline playoff team. But like, there's a lot of faith here. Like KOC turning Kirk into a player that Kirk has not consistently been. This is an older team in a lot of key spots. So, like, this would not be oh, my God, they got beat badly, and I am absolutely floored. It'd be disappointing. And, again, if they no-showed it, that would be concerning, which I don't think will be a problem. But I'm sticking with this, you guys. We don't know exactly what to expect from this team yet. And so this, to me, is not oh, my God, a for surefire playoff team got beat by Detroit. I'd be disappointed, but I wouldn't be absolutely floored.
Well, I have them. I do have them beating Detroit in my preseason schedule prediction, but I also have them. I had them losing to New Orleans and maybe Chicago. So maybe you flip flop the Chicago and Lions games. I have them starting 2-3 and still winning 11 games. So I have kind of built in mentally and in my predictions. At the end of the year, they're going to have things smoothed out. They're going to play some weaker opponents, a bunch of home games after the bye week in week 7. But getting to the bye 3-3 is going to be the challenge. So, again, they play 6 games before the bye. I have them losing 3 of them in some order. And maybe now that we've seen some of the games, maybe it's if they go 3-3, maybe it's losses to Detroit or New Orleans and then at Miami, and they beat Chicago, and maybe they split between Detroit and New Orleans or something. My point is, I think they're going to start kind of meh record-wise and then pick it up after the bye anyway. So if they get smoked by Detroit, I would say, whatever. I mean, okay. Let's see,
I think there's a little bit of
I think
there's a little bit of a pump the brakes situation if they lose to Detroit. It's a pump the brakes as okay, this is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. Yeah, I don't think it's a full-on panic, but it's this is going to be a little bit of a grind to being a above 500 team to being a team that should be in the playoffs. But getting to the bye 3-3, and obviously if you get there 4-2, I think that's a huge win. But it might just be, can you get to the bye at 500, 3-3, assess your situation from there. But if you're 4-2, it'll make life a hell of a lot easier just mathematically to make the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, if you go into the bye like 2-4, you might as well start booking tee times, Declan.
Amen. And I would go to the Meadows at Mystic Lake, one of the most scenic and award-winning 18-hole public golf courses. Finally, some fall golf weather. I just bought some new golf jogger pants that I'm excited to wear this weekend,
wow.
baby. I'm ready to rock. Judd is, I saw the swing on the Judd Athlete Challenge from 4 or 5 years back.
Long time ago.
It is on our YouTube channel. Just Google Judd Athlete Challenge, and he pipes an iron like 120 yards right on the fairway. So I think he's hustling us a little bit. But Judd and I can go to the Meadows at Mystic Lake. Book your tee time now. Golfthemeadows.com to learn more. Golfthemeadows.com to book that tee time.
Yeah, that was Judd's first golf swing in 20 years as part of a bet on our show back in the day.
At least 20 years.
And lefty. I didn't know you were a lefty.
Yes. Yeah, I golf and bat left and shoot for hockey left and do everything else with my right hand.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
very
you
weird.
had not picked up a golf club in 20 years.
Yeah,
and we said,
I believe late 90s. I think that's right.
and so we had said, okay, how many strokes? What's the over/under for Judd on a par 3 with no warm-ups, no range, nothing, just picking up a club for the first time? And it was like 160-yard par 3 or something. And I think with listener help, we wound up setting the over/under at 7.5 strokes. And then Judd pipes the first shot. Like we thought, oh, he's probably going to hit one into the woods to start with, or duff one, and now he's still on the tee box hitting 2, and he hits it 120 yards right down the middle, and now he gets what's the math? 6 strokes from 40 yards out, and he wound up using I think 6 strokes total, but with a 3-putt built in there. But it was never really in question. It's pretty good. So all right, Donovan Germain says via the Score North app, saw an article the other day with my new favorite Kirk Cousins conspiracy theory for why he plays terribly during primetime. They think he might have astigmatism, making it difficult for him to see clearly at night under the bright lights of a stadium. Judd, can you ask Kirk Cousins if he has astigmatism in his next press conference, please?
The next time I see him, I will try to remember to ask that question. Now, I have that, and I know exactly what he's talking about, because I do have at night, I don't see crap. It's really bad. That being said, wouldn't you think that he is probably at this point in time in his career that's been deducted and he's had like LASIK surgery? Like I have a hard time believing
he might not want to stump for the laser surgery.
That they call Kirk in and they're like, "Hey, Kirk," and he's like, "Yeah, we got a night chart here." Oh man, I can't read that. Oh, we got problems. So, but it's a
maybe he's reading the art chart during the day. Maybe the physicals are done during the daytime. Maybe
but when I drive at night, it's not good.
Good to know.
Be.
It's stay away from me at night.
Yeah, no problem.
And I'm not
I
saying
would
because I'm
be getting in the
drinking.
car.
I'm just
Right.
it's not
well,
good.
I didn't think that.
It's not
Yeah,
good.
but
No, I know.
I'm
I just
not,
want to make it very clear.
Not getting near the car with you now. This is weird.
Don't drink and drive, kids.
Frank Marino says, which NFL team has the most playoff losses? That would be our Vikings with 30. So I actually looked this up.
That makes sense.
And I closed the page like an idiot. But the Vikings do indeed have the most playoff losses of any team in NFL history. They have the, I think, 6th worst playoff winning percentage in NFL history. But I also think they have the most playoff wins of any team that doesn't have a Super Bowl championship.
That's a hollow stat.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunity. I don't know. I mean, Frank,
Yeah, it all makes
you're
sense.
right.
Thanks, Phil.
The Vikings get to the playoffs a lot.
Thanks for the update, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
No, Frank. Frank is the
Well,
one.
Frank and Phil. I'm just glad you guys both have looked up the futility.
Mike Conlon here. He's our chief frustration officer in the Purple Daily Leadership Cabinet.
Busy.
He says, he's definitely living up to his role here. I am overwhelmed after the Philadelphia game. Such a frustrating game with the lack of offense. The defense looked like a preseason game with third-string guys out there. Special teams was the only good thing about that game. I am okay with the tough loss, though. I really didn't think they would be winning in Philadelphia anyways, and I tempered my expectations for the season. I am hoping that the team responds and we destroy Detroit. I think it will tell us a lot if things have really changed or if it's just more of the same from last year. Listen, there's a lot of talk about destroying Detroit. This is not a pushover team, guys. This team is 4-4 in their last 8 games. Mm-hmm. They're averaging 34 points per game their last 4 games going back to last year. Okay? You're not, I guess, could you destroy them? Sure. But you didn't destroy them last year in either of those games. You probably should have lost both those games. So this whole, like, now they got to come back and destroy. No, just beat Detroit. I don't care if it's by 17 or a game-winning field goal. Just beat Detroit. You're not going to destroy Detroit.
Statistically, this game should come down more so to the Vikings defense because Detroit right now is second in the league in scoring offense. But as I said before, they're second to last in defense. So this should be a game, especially at home, where the Vikings can put up points against Detroit. But this one, to me, is going to be squarely on, can the defense stop them? You know, because, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking to lose a game that got into the 30s or potentially 40s.
Yeah,
like, if you can't stop a team,
Jared
can't
Goff,
stop a team.
A lot better lately. Okay, Jake Ward has a question about our tight end situation. Says we've talked about Irv Smith going up against linebackers and creating opportunities and mismatches, but so far I don't see it. I understand it's only 2 games, but as of now, Johnny Munt has played more snaps, is a much better blocking tight end, and from what I've seen is pretty good in the passing game. Do you think Irv Smith is going to reach his potential, or at least the potential that fans see in him? Or do you think Munt is taking most of the snaps and sticking around next season while the Vikings let Irv Smith leave for free agency? Thank you. Skull from Idaho.
I feel like I've become an Irv Smith apologist, like an Irv stan, because I saw training camp before he got hurt last year, and I'm telling you, it's true. He was fantastic. Here's my hope. He's missed a lot of time, and he didn't play a snap in 2021. I have been underwhelmed to date, but that being said, I'm holding out hope that as he gets more snaps and more passes directed his way, that we see the guy who caught the touchdown pass on Monday, not the guy that dropped it. So I am going to remain for now an Irv Smith stan because I think there's something there. But am I growing a little bit concerned? Absolutely. I'm worried he's going to get hurt again. But he definitely looks like a guy, not surprisingly, who didn't play for a year and is trying to get himself back in the swing of things. So for right now, I am holding out hope. Because, look, Johnny Munt's been a pleasant surprise. And the Johnny Munts and Tyler Conklins, right? Those guys are important, and they need to block, and they certainly can catch some passes. But Irv Smith at his premium is not like he's got the same position as Munt, but he's not the same player at all. So that's my hope, is that there's more here.
Yeah. Okay, Stuart Gonzalez Blank says, something I was thinking about in relation of the generation of Vikings fans. What are the generations of football? We are obviously in the start of the mobile quarterback era, but some older generations I can think of. There's the bell cow running back generation, the pocket passer quarterback generation. Am I wrong? What are some of the football generations you can think of?
It starts with the forward pass, right?
You want to go all the way back there?
1920s, I believe. We need to allow the forward pass.
Oh my! Look at he's dropping back to pass. There was the guys running into the goalpost when it was on the goal line generation. Whose idea was that, by the way?
Yeah,
hey, let's put this giant pole right in the and they all the old
it was 2
ones
at the
had
time.
2 poles. Yes,
yeah, it was like whoa.
And so guys were running like, and think about if you're a tight end or a receiver or a wing back, whatever they called him back in the day, you're coming across the field, and you can just use the goalpost to screen a defender and a referee.
Yep.
And then guys would just get knocked out running into the goalpost too.
I would say the 70s were definitely probably the bell cow running back / headhunting defensive back.
Headhunting safety era. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jack Tatum era.
And you know, you could try and basically kill a guy.
Yeah, then the defensive lineman could do the head slap too, the Deacon Jones head slap.
But you go back and watch those hits that on passes when guys dared to try and go over the middle for a pass. You go back and watch those hits; they are devastating.
Dude, when I was a kid, I just Googled it. It's available for $2 on Etsy. One of my favorite videos as a kid. It was produced by Sports Illustrated, and it was called NFL's Greatest Hits.
Yeah.
And
yep.
The cover of this video, it was a white VHS case, And it started off with like a couple guys in the old newsroom putting together a film. They're like eating and stuff. And the whole thing is just NFL players and quarterbacks getting murdered by defensive players. And the video itself, like the cover of the VHS, it's NFL's greatest hits in all caps.
Yep.
And it's a picture of a poor guy getting folded up like an accordion with his head like crinked against AstroTurf.
Football
I
porn.
think it's like is it Eagles Bears? Yeah, it's like two Bears defenders just murdering some poor guy.
Buddy Ryan probably his defense.
Yes. Yeah.
46.
So I think somewhere in the 80s it was like steroided out, just like foaming at the mouth, neck rolls, guys getting ambulanced off the field, AstroTurf, and then the NFL started moving away from that in the early 2000s.
I think he got suspended, but now you'd be suspended for like a year. Go back and watch the Bears defender. I forget his name right now. Who picks up Jim McMahon? Or no, I'm sorry, the Packers defender. Is it Charles Martin? He picks up McMahon after the ball's gone. So like the ball is long gone, and he spikes him.
Yeah,
like he literally just spike. I mean, it's a wrestling move,
dude. That's a different era. So there you go. I guess those are the generations. There's the spike quarterbacks on their head.
The 90s
generation.
is what then?
I
Like
think
the
90s is bell cow running back. I think 90s is because that's when you had like Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Ricky Waters. Like every team had an identifiable bell cow running back in the 90s.
I feel like the bell cow
Terrell Davis.
running back went for like 30 years though, right? Because it started in at
probably.
least the 60s, and then it went, you're right, through the 90s.
Yeah.
And then the rules started to morph and change thanks to Randy Moss largely.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So there you go. I just found on YouTube NFL's greatest hits. It's from 1988. Someone has taken this VHS and put it on YouTube. So if you guys are bored over the weekend and you want to watch this, it's a glorious.
There's no question. Old Macadac, a glass of red wine, and and his childhood.
Yep.